Police Officer Knight and his buddy Greg, the dog, recklessly drive around OK City in search of the elusive criminal Petey, the cat. They would nearly run through a red light if not for Greg, who stopped him after being distracted while eating a hot dog sandwich while driving. When they thought they had lost Petey, he suddenly emerged from a manhole, driving an alligator vehicle and making a run for it. Office Knight chases after him, and a reckless car chase ensues. When Petey brazenly runs up an unfinished runway, Officer Knight follows him despite the risk. He asks Greg to take care of his girlfriend, Alice, should anything happen to him. Making the jump, they come up short, but Greg pulls out the parachute. They nearly escaped falling to their deaths and landed on the roof of an abandoned warehouse. When they think they have just escaped death, Petey appears before them, gloating that he won't have to worry about them anymore. Officer Knight wondered what he meant when he discovered a bomb behind them. When he was trying to defuse the bomb, he was torn about which wire to cut. Greg tells him to cut the blue wire, but Officer Knight misunderstands him when he says blue for green. His mistake caused the bomb to go off. Officer Knight and Greg, the dog, were quickly rushed to the hospital after incurring grave injuries from the explosion. The doctor explains that Officer Knight's head is severely injured while Greg's body is beyond repair. Suddenly, the nurse had a wild idea and suggested stitching Greg's head on Officer Knight's body. Back then, Officer Knight was physically strong but not quite bright, while Greg the dog was intelligent but physically weak. With the doctor's help, they stringed together what each was strong at to become the ultimate police officer, Dogman, the super cop. Dogman returns home but is surprised to discover it is empty. He walks around the house, looking back at their good memories. Suddenly, the realtor walks in and explains how the old owner moved so fast with her new boyfriend and his dog, given that the old one had an accident. When he sees his old ball roll, Dogman gets on all fours, wanting to play ball. The realtor lady picks it up and throws the ball outside, closing the door on him. That night, Petey is furious that when he tries to eliminate them, he, in turn, creates a super cop. He suddenly had a brilliant idea of building a huge, high-tech, expensive vacuum cleaner, claiming that dogs hate them. His assistant butler argues that dogs also hate fireworks, and they only cost $5. After getting an earful from Chief, Dogman goes out into the streets to look for clues. Suddenly, a giant vacuum cleaner chases Dogman across the city, and he lures him into the ocean. When Petey drowns underwater, Dogman saves him. Before he could get the slip on him, Dogman handcuffs him and puts him in jail. Later, Petey escapes prison by tricking one of the prisoners into playing seesaw with him, which launches him into the air and past the wall. Petey tries again. This time, he catapults hundreds of bones, but Dogman digs a giant hole into which Petey falls. Dogman then covers the hole with dirt and handcuffs Petey. At the prison, Petey escapes again, stealing Big Jim's balloons, which he got for his birthday, which frustrates the mayor and the chief. Petey refuses to give up and keeps attacking with several contraptions. Still, Dogman continues to outsmart him and puts him back in jail, which Petey always escapes. Petey returns to his hideout but finds the place is a mess. When Butler argues that the only person who could stand working for him is him, he comes up with a brilliant idea. Petey realizes that he needs another him, one that thinks and acts like him. He then searches the internet to buy a cloning machine. Later, the mayor visits the chief and insists he takes Dogman off the case. Chief tries to explain that Dogman caught Petey, but she doesn't listen. Chief feels terrible for Dogman the next day, so he brings him in for a special mission. He orders Dogman to guard the dead Flippy, the fish, while the scientists at the science center study its body and his incredible brain powers. Meanwhile, Petey runs out of ideas to take down Dogman when he sees the news about Flippy, the fish. He comes up with the idea of dropping Flippy in the smokestack at the living spray factory to bring it back alive. Chief reminds Dogman that his job is to watch the monitors and keep Flippy the fish secured at the lab. When he takes his eyes off the monitor for a second, Petey sneaks inside and steals Flippy. Dogman runs outside when Petey appears before them and gloats. Dogman chases after him using the TV crew's drone, but he gets distracted by a cat on the roof that Petey escapes. He returns to the precinct to report it, but the chief already knows. Dogman then hands him a drive with footage of Petey stealing Flippy the fish. When he suddenly hears the doorbell, Petey returns to his lab and tries to reprogram Flippy the fish to destroy all do-gooders. He checks it out to discover that his cloning machine has just arrived. He quickly puts a strand of hair in it, but finds a baby version of himself was created. Worried he made a mistake, he quickly ordered the undo button online, which was sold separately. The baby clone, later named Little Petey, quickly imprints on him as his parent, but when Petey doesn't know how to handle him, Little Petey cries through the night. Later, Petey heads out to drop Flippy the fish at the living spray factory, but Little Petey insists on going with him. When he was about to drop Flippy down the pipe, Little Petey pressed a button that caused him to drop the fish in the wrong pipe. Worried that Little Petey continues to mess up his plans, Petey decides to give him away to random strangers, but even they don't take him when they realize he is rude. When Little Petey wanders off, Petey abandons him on the street, and Dogman stumbles upon him and takes him home. Since then, they have become inseparable that even the public notices. While Petey is left to his own devices, Butler drops by the lab to annoy him with pictures of Dogman adopting Little Petey. Having completed his ADHD robot, he orders it to find and retrieve Little Petey from Dogman's home. Little Petey asks him what he plans to do with Dogman, and Petey claims he will deal with him using his squirrel shooter. Seeing Dogman likes to chase squirrels. That night, Petey sends him to his room, but Little Petey insists on sleeping with him. Petey claims he wants to give the support and guidance he needs to become mean and rotten-hearted like him. He explains that his father took everything they had growing up and left him and his mother alone. Little Petey feels pity for him and suggests looking for his father, claiming that he might have changed after what happened. Once Petey went to sleep, Little Petey orders ADHD to track down and bring back Petey's father. The next day, the doorbell rings, and they discover that it is ADHD carrying Petey's father, later nicknamed Grandpa. Their reunion becomes awkward when Grandpa goes through his stuff like he owns the place. Petey asks him why they brought him there, to which Little Petey explains that he just wanted him to have his father. Petey states he doesn't know how it feels to be abandoned, but Little Petey claims he does, and he forgave him, which makes Petey feel guilty. Workers find Flippy the fish down a pipe at the living spray factory and are amused that someone threw him into the smokestack, hoping it would bring him back to life. They were playing with it when they suddenly hit a gas tank, drenched in the living spray that brought it back to life. Flippy, the telekinetic fish, heads out and discovers that the entire factory is also coming to life, to which they start rampaging in the city. Meanwhile, Dogman becomes frantic when he wakes up to find Little Petey missing. He calls Sarah Haydoff from the news, hoping she could help find him. They search the city but can't find him anywhere, so Dogman loses hope and gives up. Sarah tries to comfort him by telling him how she lost her pet gerbil when she was young. She claims that she learned that no matter what, they need to keep going. Suddenly, Petey shows up out of nowhere with the squirrel shooter. He tries shooting a mechanical squirrel at him, but Sarah pushes Dogman to safety and discovers that they are exploding mechanical squirrels. Realizing what he was planning, Dogman takes out his handcuffs and prepares to take Petey in. Petey retreated inside the tank and drove away with Dogman still holding on. They run off an unfinished ramp, and an explosion causes them to land on a cheesesteak billboard. When Little Petey saw Dogman arrest Petey, he ran out to stop him, although it was apparent people just discovered that he was Petey's son. Little Petey claims he is Dogman's friend, but Petey refuses, claiming he can't be friends with a do-gooder like him. Flippy the fish overhears him saying do-gooder and turns his attention to Dogman. Petey celebrates his victory now that Flippy the fish and the building will finish him once and for all. When they think it will attack Dogman, Flippy changes his target and takes Little Petey with him instead. Petey extends his hand to Dogman, asking for help rescuing Little Petey in exchange for surrendering once everything is over. Flippy thought of using Little Petey as bait for the other do-gooders when Petey and Dogman suddenly arrived with the Mecha Mailman 2000 demanding his surrender. Flippy refuses and calls for his building, which sneaks up behind them. With Dogman on the wheel, he uses his kung fu skills to wrestle the giant living building. Although they managed to free Little Petey from Flippy, the living spray factory started leaking chemicals that turned the surrounding buildings alive. Although outnumbered, they could take down most of the living buildings before they get taken down too. Little Petey returns to the lab and orders ADHD to fly out, worried about his father. Chief, Sarah, and the cameraman jump inside the Mecha Mailman to check on Dogman and Petey when they find themselves trapped inside, while the giant buildings outside continue to trample on them. Dogman leads them to escape through the vents. As soon as they get outside, the big gym building is about to finish them off when Little Petey and ADHD arrive to rescue them. Little Petey inadvertently destroys the gym building, causing it to collapse on the radio tower building. Flippy refuses to give up and lifts a car with his powers to finish them off. Petey hands Little Petey to Dogman and asks him to escape while he distracts Flippy with the ADHD. Petey pretends to be unconscious while the others run to safety. Flippy wonders how to finish him off when he sees a volcano from a distance and decides to throw him in. Dogman and Little Petey catch up to them in the squirrel shooter, but when they are about to do a standoff, Little Petey asks him what he is doing. He keeps asking why, until Flippy admits he is doing it because no one likes him. Little Petey claims he just needs a friend, and he then reads a book that he wrote about him and Flippy. Flippy was so moved that it brought him to tears. Flippy was crying when he realized that his powers were fading and that Petey and the ADHD was falling straight into the volcano. Dogman quickly aims the squirrel shooter and uses his favorite ball to push Petey away from the volcano. Later, Chief arrives at the scene in Sarah's news van and arrests Flippy the fish for the crimes he committed. He then gives Dogman the handcuff to arrest Petey, but he hesitates, thinking of Little Petey when the mayor suddenly arrives. The mayor claims that the governor saw everything on TV and pardoned Petey for being a do-gooder. Petey throws a fit, claiming he's no do-gooder, and walks away with Little Petey. Later, Petey and Little Petey return to their home when they run into Grandpa running off in a mover. Petey wasn't surprised that he took all of their things, which made Little Petey sad when he took everything but not his comics. Petey tries to comfort him, claiming that some people don't change. Suddenly, he hears the doorbell and receives the undo button he ordered online. Although tempted, Petey throws it away, claiming he would never do it. Petey claims that although the world has a lot of problems, it can never be a horrible place because he is in it, which Little Petey claims so does Dogman. That night, Dogman hears a knock, which he discovers is Petey and Little Petey. Petey then gives him a ball marked Dogman in exchange for the ball he lost, trying to save him from the volcano. Dogman was so overjoyed that he jumped at Petey and slobbered all over him. Petey asks him if Little Petey could stay with him, and they read a story. Later, they start howling, and even Petey joins in. Suddenly, Chief, Sarah, and the cameraman arrive, claiming that there's one more building on the loose. Just when they thought it would start rampaging, the laser pointer building lit up the place, and they partied through the night. Thank you for watching. Check out these other videos and subscribe and tap the bell to be notified about our latest videos. See you next time.